This is an example that we did in class. So this is just one industry in the whole economy. But for your homework, you have like 4 industries, but you don't have total employment. But here I gave you the total employment, but for your homework assignment, you need to compute for the total employment. So for this example, I give you 1990 2000 information for retail industry and also the total employment for the whole country in 1990 and 2000. I want you first to apply the shift share analysis to find out what's the national share, industry mix, and regional shift. And then the second thing is to do a projection. I want you to forecast retail employment in the region in 2010, assuming that the growth rate over the next 10 years will be the same at the national level as the past 10 years. And regional shift at your local scale in the next 10 years will be the same in the past 10 years. So this is the information you have, and then if you translate into the thing you can use for the formula, this is the total employment for the country in those 2 time periods, and those are the employment for retail industry at the country level, and this is the retail employment for your local region in 1990 and 2000. And the first thing is to do shift share analysis, and this is a formula for computing national share for a specific industry, industry I. So when you translate this formula into this specific scenario, so we need to find out what's the national share for retail, and those are the information we need. So we look at the total employment ratio over 2000 and 1990 at country level. So if you plug in the number and you find out the ratio is 1.33, that means the whole economy, the total employment in the country grew by 33% over the past 10 years. And therefore, if this trend is followed, that means if there's no differences between industries and every industry is growing at the same speed, and if there's no differences between regions and every region is growing at the same speed, and then this would be the retail employment expected in your local region, that it will grow by 33% in the next 10 years, from 1990. And then this would be the expected 2000 retail employment if the overall national trend is followed. That would be 1064. And this is an industry mix formula. So if you plug in the number, and here you compare 2 ratios, and one ratio is at country level, the ratio between 2000 retail employment and the 1990 retail employment, and another ratio is the total employment between those 2 time periods employment. And if you plug in the numbers, and you will find out the first ratio is 1.15. That means the retail industry in the whole country grew by 15%. But as compared to the overall employment growth, it's 33%. And therefore, retail industry didn't grow as good as, the overall economy, and therefore the industry mix should be negative 144. If you do the calculation, a negative number indicates at the national level the industry didn't perform as good as the average of every industry together. And the next thing is regional shift, and here's a regional shift. A regional shift further compares your local retail growth to the national level retail growth. So if you plug in number, you will find out over the past 10 years, between 1990 and 2000, retail grew by 62.5% in your local, but it only grew by 15% in the region. And therefore, your local retail definitely grew faster than the whole country. And therefore, the regional shift is a positive number that indicates a strength in this industry. So if you get a negative number, that indicates a weakness of this specific industry in your local economy. And those are the three numbers you got: national share, industry mix, and the regional shift. And if you add up those three numbers, it will be exactly 13,000. That's 2,000 retail employment of your local region. That's the reason we say that, for the shift share analysis, we are decomposing the 2,000, the current retail employment, into different reasons. The first reason is national share, the amount of retail activity that take place at current time. That's because of the overall economic environment, because the whole country's economy has been growing. And second thing is industry mix. It's about the performance of a specific industry. And in this case, retail industry has a negative IM industry mix, and therefore the contribution of retail industry as a whole towards local growth is negative. So it hurts local growth. And the second thing is the regional shift. Regional shift tells you about your local economy's strength or weakness for this retail industry. And here we have a positive number that indicates your local region does have strength in retail industry, and possibly some policy going on in the local area that encourage people to purchase more, or possibly because your local people just have more income, and therefore it has more demand. They have more demand for retail services. So there are all possible locational differences between your region and the national average that contributes to this regional shift, the positive regional shift, the strength of the retail industry in your local economy. So the second part is for the employment projection. So those are the three components that we have found out, that we decomposed the 2,000 retail employment into those three reasons. And so the first thing to do a projection, you need to find out what's the regional proportion for 2000. That is exactly the addition between national shift and the industry mix. That's 1064 plus negative 144. So the regional proportion of 2000 is 920. And for regional proportion, it's related to national level activities. It has nothing to deal with local activities, local characteristics, and other local elements. And to find out the 2010 regional proportion, you need to find out growth factor. That's a G factor for retail. And I told you the assumption that in the next 10 years, the growth rate of retail employment at country level will be exactly the same as 1990 to 2000 rate for the sector at the national level. That means for the next 10 years, the past trend will be followed. The past trend is that in between 1990 to 2000, the retail employment grew from 13,000 to 15,000 and grew by 15%. If you directly take the ratio, it will be 1.15. So 2000 retail employment is 115% of the 1990 retail employment, and this trend is going to be continued. So the 2010 retail regional proportion will be 115% of the 2000 retail regional proportion for the region, and therefore the G factor is 1.15, and then if you plug in this number, and you will get 2010 retail regional proportion is 1,058. And the next thing is 2010 regional shift. We say the 2010 regional shift has a relation to the 2000 regional shift. The question here is what's the relation? What's the A ratio? Here I give you another assumption. I say that regional shift between 2000 and 2010 equal to the 1990 and the 2000 shift. That means the A ratio is 1. That means the 2010 shift will be exactly the 2000 shift. That's 380. And now you have 2010 regional proportion and regional shift. If you add up those two numbers, that will be 2010 retail employment for your local region.